Good morning and welcome. You're watching Market Cafe on ET. Now it's a fresh week of trade in front of us. And Ankita and myself are going to take you through everything that's happened in markets as well as on the domestic front, in markets as well on the business news front over the weekend. So Ankita is going to talk to us about what's happened through Friday in US markets. Of course, that rebound is quite evident, Ankita.
It is, Harsh. It is quite evident. And on Friday, we did see the rally come in. They are concluding that probably the talks on the debt ceiling is coming to a close. 5th June, the date being the last date for the debt ceiling before, US could default, perhaps default. But stocks jumped on Friday as traders grew more hopeful that lawmakers will reach a deal to raise the US debt ceiling, avoiding a potentially catastrophic default. Now, Intel and American Express rose 5.8% and 4.1% respectively to lead the Dow higher. Now, the S&P 500 tech and consumer discretionary sectors popped more than 2% each in trade. Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 328 points, the S&P 500 gained 1.3%, and the Nasdaq Composite advanced 2.2% in trade. Now remember, on Friday, Nasdaq had rallied because of Nvidia's share that inched up 24% in trade after quarter 4 results, and the rally continued on Friday as well. The Nasdaq notched its 5th straight weekly gains, rising 2.5%. The S&P 500 also posted 1 week advancing 0.3%, and the Dow was the laggard this week, or rather last week, and it lost almost 1% in trade. Now, we also saw the US manufacturing goods order jump unexpectedly in the month of April. The US consumer spending also surged in April, better than what was expected. Now, let's look at the European markets. The European stock markets closed higher. They are also expecting the debt ceiling talks to come to a conclusion very soon. And on the back of that, the Pan-European Stock 600 index closed 1.2% higher after falling to its lowest level since early April through 3 negative sessions that we saw. Now, all the sectors ended the day in the positive territory, with tech stocks surging almost 3%. DAX was up 1.2% and FTSE was up 0.7% in trade. So net, a good, strong, positive handover coming in there, Harsh.
Absolutely solid handover coming in, and let's look at where crude is at. In fact, crude is gaining on the back of that. No surprises there. What was marred last week, or rather where crude was last week, was the fact that there could be production cuts in the Saudi region, after which Russia suggested that no, we will not be cutting production at all. So OPEC was expected to cut production, and now this week you have the debt ceiling talks being coming to a sort of resolution. And when you have that coming, you obviously therefore have some amount of demand which will get supported, is the belief, is the trust, and all the negativity goes away. And that's exactly what's happened with crude as well. Let's have a look at where WTI is at, just below that $73.5 a barrel mark, so clearly gaining. And we have Brent just above the $77.5 mark, so we have both of those in the green, at least at the moment, almost 1% higher, Ankita.
That's right, Harsh. And just look at SGX Nifty, it's up 174 points, almost 1% in trade. So we are expecting a strong positive start to Indian markets as well. And let's look at the events that we need to keep a track of through this week. Of course, on the 30th of May, we are expecting the Indian GDP numbers to come out. We also are expecting the fiscal data to come out on 31st of May. On the 1st of June, we have the S&P Global PMI manufacturing data. And in the global cues, we have manufacturing, the market on the 29th of May, we will have the market close for the Memorial Day holiday for the US markets. But on the 1st of June, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI data and the initial jobless claims that will be coming out from the US markets. From the UK markets on the 29th, which is today, we have, again, the markets will be closed today. On the 1st of June, we have the S&P Global, the CIPS UK manufacturing PMI data that is also likely to come out as of today. And in the Eurozone, we have the manufacturing PMI and the CPI numbers that will be coming out on the 1st of June. And whole host of data that will be coming out from China. On the 31st of May, we have the composite numbers, the manufacturing, the non-manufacturing PMI, and the Kexin PMI manufacturing data that will be coming out on the 1st of June. And in the earnings corner, we have Apollo Hospitals and Adani Ports that will be coming out with their numbers on the 30th of May, and we have JK Cement that will be considering a fundraise of up to 500 crores in the corporate action section. And on the 29th of May, we have All Cargo that will be considering a fundraise for up to 500 crores, and we have Torrent Power also that will be considering a fundraise. So these are the events that we need to keep a track of throughout this week, Harsh.
Absolutely, we'll keep a track an eye on that. Let's quickly move on though on the global front. Finally, with just days to go for the US to default on its payment, President Joe Biden said that he had finalized a budget agreement with the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to suspend the $31.4 trillion debt ceiling until the 1st of January 2025. He added that the deal was ready to move to Congress for a vote.
And shifting focus to the big geopolitical news we are tracking this morning, Russia unleashed airstrikes on Kyiv overnight in what is now being termed as the largest drone attack on the city since the war. This amid the city's efforts to mark the annual celebration of its founding. According to the Ukrainian military officials, almost all the Iranian-made aircraft were shot down. The Air Force said it shot down 52 out of 54 drones launched against the city in successive waves, killing 1 and injured 2 people.
Well, and shifting focus to Egypt, Turkey, I beg your pardon, President Erdogan extended his 2 decades in power in elections on Sunday. In reaction, the Turkish lira slipped to a record low against the dollar. Do remember, the lira, which is prone to sharp swings, has weakened more than 6% since the start of the year and lost more than 90% of its value over the past decade. In his victory speech, President Erdogan said that inflation was the most urgent issue for the country, which would fall following the policy rate.
And North Korea has notified Japan of a military satellite launch between the 31st May to 11th May as per reports. Analysts say the military satellite is part of nuclear-armed North Korea's efforts to advance surveillance technology, which will include drones to improve its ability to strike targets in the event of a conflict.
Well, and in terms of layoffs, the mayhem continues. JPMorgan Chase has slashed as many as 500 job roles across departments. The layoffs impact employees across the bank's main business, consumer, commercial banking, and asset and wealth management, as well as tech and operations. Meanwhile, the Singaporean investment firm Temasek has reduced compensation for senior management and the investment team responsible for the failed FTX investment.
And well, what is Chris Wood's advice to investors, those who are invested, those who want to invest, and the ones that are not invested in India? In an exclusive chat with ET Now, he talks about why he is still bullish on India. Let's take a look.
There are 3 types of investors. 1, who own India. 2, who want to buy India. And 3, who've never bought India. What would be advice to all the 3 categories?
Well, to be fair to the people who never bought India, one complication in India, it's not that easy to buy Indian stocks unless you're set up with FII. It's not like there's hundreds of Indian ADRs. So if you really want everybody to buy India, you just have to make it easier to buy Indian stocks.
And those who are currently invested in Indian stocks, what should they do?
No, the emerging market people will be adding to their Indian exposure now, and global money, which no longer wants to buy Chinese stocks because they're worried that the US government is going to order them to sell the Chinese stocks, or they're worried that if they buy a Chinese stock, it will be sanctioned. So global money is definitely beginning to look to add to exposure to India.
So can I say that the ducks are just aligning correctly in terms of liquidity? Domestic institutional investors are getting inflows.
Absolutely.
Because of SIP. foreign institutional investors have just about made a comeback, and globally there are multiple problems which will force foreign investors to double up into India.
Yeah, you see, well, the dedicated emerging market guys are only a little overweight India relative to, they're always overweight India, but they're much less overweight than they used to be, so they can definitely add exposure. But the question is whether global money, which is a much bigger pool, but doesn't, well, for India, the benchmark weighting is minute. Will they just come to India just because it's a great story, even though it's a very small part of their index? And I think there's a growing chance they will do.
You track Sensex more than Nifty. And we've discussed this over several engagements and separate interviews. What to your mind is not the probability, but the possibility of the Sensex touching 1 lakh in the next 5 years?
1 lakh is
100,000.
Well, I think there's a huge likelihood that, yeah.
I want to hear that loudly.
It's very
you
likely.
say that there's a...
No, that to me is very reasonable. Yeah, very, very easy to see.
So Chris Wood is of the view that in the next 5 years, the Sensex...
Let's put it like this. I would be disappointed if the Sensex had not touched 100,000 5 years from now.
Okay, so I'm going to capture and recapture this headline again. You will be disappointed if the Sensex in the next 5 years does not hit 100,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can go above 100,000 also.
Well, clearly, yeah.
If not Indian stocks, where else one could invest in the world?
Well, for investors who believe, I don't believe the Fed is going to enforce keep monetary policy tight all the way to the US inflation reaching 2%. So I believe they will fudge the 2% target. So I believe that inflation in the US will be structurally higher post-pandemic than before it, say 3-4%. So people who buy that point of view should, they should be looking to add to gold mining stocks. And I think for people who want to invest externally, I think Japan is interesting because it looks like inflation's come back in Japan, and that can mean that Japanese equities could be very attractive, and it could mean that the yen could go up a lot.
ये नया भवन हमारे स्वतंत्रता सेनानियों के सपनों को साकार करने का माध्यम बनेगा।
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी और ये क्षण अनुपम इसलिए भी है क्योंकि ये हमारे ऐतिहासिक, सांस्कृतिक विरासत और आधुनिकता के संगम को अपने आप में समेटे हुए हैं।
ये नया भवन आत्मनिर्भर भारत के सूर्योदय का साक्षी बनेगा।
अब मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी से पुनः अनुरोध करूंगा कि इस अवसर पर भारत सरकार के वित्त मंत्रालय द्वारा तैयार किए गए विशेष सिक्के को भी जारी करने का कष्ट करें।
साथियों, नए रास्तों पर चलकर ही नए प्रतिमान गढ़े जाते हैं।
Right, India gets a new parliament as Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates the new parliament building in the presence of VIPs and the union ministers. PM Modi also installed the Senyal scepter inside the Lok Sabha, which BJP claims is the symbol of the transfer of power from the British. The inauguration done amid a boycott that saw at least 20 opposition parties refusing to attend the ceremony. The vast triangular-shaped complex in the heart of Delhi will house the upper and lower parliamentary houses. It sits adjacent to the old building that was constructed in 1927 during the colonial era, which will now be converted into a museum.
And well, with that, it's time for us to slip into a short break. But before that, we at Times Network are back with a flagship event, the India Economic Conclave, which is known to set the stage for driving India's economic agenda. As we move forward on the path of integrated, equitable development, which is all-inclusive, all-pervasive, universal, and one that strengthens not just the Indian economy, but the global one as well. To pursue this agenda, the theme for this year is India, the emerging third superpower. IEC will feature the biggest voices from politics, global markets, economy, and corporate world. So get ready to catch all the action here on Times Network.
Right, with that positive cue on the global markets, let's switch over to where Asia is at the moment. We're looking at positive across the board in Asia as well. You can see a 0.25% higher on the Shanghai. We're also seeing a similar number on the Hang Seng as well. So positive across the board. My apologies, the Hang Seng in fact slightly lower, trending lower, around 0.1% lower, slightly on the negative side with regard to the open on the Hang Seng. We're also looking at gains on the Nikkei up over 1.3% or thereabouts. We're seeing the Kospi also higher, around 0.1% or so, and we're seeing gains on the ASX 200, 1% higher on the ASX 200. The SGX Nifty also indicating a positive start, 18,700 plus is at least the indication at the moment.
That's right, Harsh. So we did see a strong global handover coming in there, but we do see SGX Nifty come off the highs. It's 20 points lower from the highs that we saw in the morning. But a strong global positive handover, and the SGX Nifty up 0.8%, hinting towards a positive start for the Indian market. Welcome back. You're watching Market Cafe with me, Ankita Saxena, and with me is Harsh Saita. Let's quickly move on to the news coming in on the domestic front now. Automaker Mahindra & Mahindra announced its Q4 results, and it saw an exceptional loss of over 500 crore rupees, although revenue saw a 30% growth on a year-on-year basis. My colleague Shrishti is here to break down all those numbers for us. Over to you, Shrishti.
So I would say a mixed bag by M&M this time, because there has been a disappointment onto the margin figure, but an outperformance when it comes to the profit figure of the company. Although the revenue as well as the EBITDA has come in line to the ET Now estimates. But let's talk about the numbers. The company has reported a top line of 22,571 crores, and that's a jump of 4.5% on a sequential basis. EBITDA at 2,798 crores. When it comes to the margins, we were expecting that number to be 13%, but 12.4% is what the company clocked in. And lastly, onto the bottom line, there's an exceptional item of 511 crores on the back of the provisioning of some of their impairments, and on the back of that, in adjusting to that, the bottom line has come in at 1,975 crores versus our expectation of close to 1,650 crores. So a mixed bag, would say, because the margins have disappointed a bit, but the profit figure has outperformed. But let's look at the internals, because this time we were expecting the EBIT margins of the auto business to be great, and that has surpassed that 7% mark as well. But the SUV revenue market share has declined a bit on a sequential basis from 20.6% in Q3 to 19.6% this time around. When it comes to their farm business, the EBIT margin is almost flat on a sequential basis, because do remember that there has been a decline in the volumes on a sequential basis, as well as when it comes to the market share, there seems to be losing out some bit over there. But Rajesh Jejulkar of M&M says that next 12 months is going to be exciting in terms of the new product launches. So that is something that we'll be watching out for.
Right, and pharma company Sun Pharma also saw a 15% rise in its revenue for the quarter gone by on a year-on-year basis, and also managed to pare its losses in the same time period. Srishti, talk to us about that particular piece.
A decent set by Sun Pharma this time, where the profit margin as well as EBITDA has come in higher than what we were expecting at ET. Now the revenue has come in line, but if we see the growth on a sequential basis, there on the headline numbers you will see a negative figure. Let's talk about the numbers, which actually showed a degrowth of 8.5%, and 1984 crores is what the company reported in the bottom line, but that includes an exception item of 171 crores on the account of impairment of the wholly owned subsidiary. So a higher figure is what you can get on to adjusting to that exception item, but the margins were also higher versus our expectation at 25.6%. The EBITDA has shown a degrowth of 7%, but talking about revenue, that figure has come in close to 11,000 crores. Talking about the internals, their India business was actually flat, where we were expecting some bit of a growth. Talking about their US business, that has shown a bit of an outperformance versus the expectation, but that's the emerging market business that has seen a decline of 14% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So a major pressure coming in from that particular market, but other than that, their R&D spend is almost flat on a sequential basis. The global specialty is up 4% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, but that includes a 6.8 million milestone payment being received in Q4. So all in all, I would say a decent set reported by Sun Pharma, although the numbers were higher than the estimates, but a sequential decline is what we have seen.
And we'll stick with Sun Pharma then. It came out with its Q4 number, but it has also offered to acquire the shares it doesn't already own in Taro Pharma for $38 per share. Sun Pharma currently owns a 78% stake in Taro Pharma. My colleague Sharath is here to tell us more details on this. Over to you, Sharath.
Well, yes, in focus we are having Sun Pharma, and Taro Pharma, its arm in US, has come out in its SEC filings and they have stated that they have received a buyout offer coming in from Sun Pharma at almost $38 per share. Now, this is a non-binding interest being shown by Sun Pharma, and they intend to acquire the remaining shares in Taro Pharma in an all-cash deal basis. Now, of course, the pricing, if you look at it, that is more than 30% of the premium as compared to the recent closing prices, and also that post-acquisition Taro Pharma will become the arm of Sun Pharma in a wholly owned subsidiary manner, and also it will be delisted from NYSE. Now, overall, if you look at the shareholding pattern in Taro Pharma, Sun Pharma holds roughly 72% stake, and the balance remaining stake, if you include the premium, the valuations comes to close almost $401 million, which is roughly around 3,300 odd crore rupees. Now, focusing on Taro Pharma itself, the stock went up more than 20% in the post-market trading hours, and also the company appointed a special committee to evaluate the proposal coming in from Sun Pharma. There are other key investors also there in Taro Pharma, which includes big names such as BlackRock, Norges Bank and ARK Investments.
Right, thanks for that, Sharath. Then
welcome back. You're watching Market Cafe, and it is that time of the show where we get you all the stock-specific news, and for that we have Lisa and Ashesha in the studio with us. But first up, Ashesha, tell us what are the stocks that we need to keep on our radar? What has caught your eye?
Hi, good morning. So let's start off with an earnings candidate. Balkrishna Industries reported its numbers on Friday. It also updated its capex plans. First up, let's talk about numbers, where revenues for the quarter gone by declined by about 2.4% on a year-on-year basis. Margins too have contracted this quarter. Company reported margins at 20.7% versus 21.2% that the company reported same time last year, which means on a year-on-year basis, margins have contracted by about 50 basis points. They say that higher other expenses were offset by lower freight costs that the company enjoyed in the quarter gone by, and that is the reason margins were impacted in the fourth quarter. As far as their capex plans are concerned, they said that advanced carbon black project of 30,000 MTPA at Bhuj is now completed, is expected to be completed by the second half of FY24. Moving on to Ease My Trip planners, then they too reported their numbers, where gross booking revenue saw an uptick of a whopping 83% on a year-on-year basis. As far as adjusted revenue is concerned, that was up 81%, and profit after tax also saw an uptick of about 33% on a YOY basis. Moving on to Kyiv Cotton then, where the company said that Ministry of Heavy Industries has alleged that a material subsidiary of the company has failed to adhere to phased manufacturing program guidelines, and they've also proposed to deregister it from FAME India scheme phase 2. So on the back of this news that has come in with respect to its material subsidiary, Kyiv Cotton will also be in focus today. Moving on to Newland Laboratories then, where US FDA has inspected company's Unit 3 manufacturing facility, and they said that this inspection has been concluded with 3 observations which have been given under Form 483. Lastly, let's talk about Lupin, where the company has received Spiriva approval from Health Canada. The product has a market size of about 42 million US dollars, and analysts do expect Lupin to generate about 10 to 15 million US dollars of revenue from the Canadian market from this particular drug. So on the back of this news that has come in, Lupin will also be in focus today.
Right, thanks so much for all of that, Ashesha. Let me quickly rope in Lisa as well. Well, we have a Piramal conference, call which happened with Jeffries. Talk to us about that, Lisa. What are the key takeaways?
Well, yes, good morning. At the Jeffries India conference, they captured the Piramal takeaways from the MD. The MD stated that the stress recognition in the wholesale one book that has been largely done, and also the asset monetization transactions that will continue for the next few quarters. But however, the run rate for the monetization that is expected to be lower than the 40 billion monetization which was done in Q4. Also, the retail loans are growing, and that is expected to drive 15% AUM CAGR going forward. And also, they will be focusing on building a granular loan portfolio book, and they will also be continuing to scout for inorganic growth opportunities. So on that note, Jeffries has maintained a buy on the stock, and they have also hiked the target price to rupees 2,105 marginally from 2,000 earlier.
Right, thanks so much for that, Lisa. Another stock which will be in focus will be ICICI Lombard. Now, this is on the back of the fact that ICICI Bank has, the board of ICICI Bank has agreed to purchase an additional 4% odd stake in ICICI Lombard. Mind you, ICICI Bank already owns 48% stake in Lombard. So an additional 4% will mean that the sell pressure goes away on ICICI Lombard. So that's a big positive. Of course, the stake increase is subject to regulatory approval. So need to wait and watch as to how those play out. But the increase itself is going to happen over multiple tranches. And with the initial 2.5% to happen by the 9th of September 2024. So we have some amount of time left for that. The bank holds around 48% currently, I did mention that. And of course, a similar position in other subsidiaries will be a major positive for group companies. So that is definitely a positive. Mind you, earlier, ICICI Bank was actually expected to divest 18% of its stake from Lombard. So that overhang also probably goes away, which is definitely a positive for the stock. Right, the other stock that will be in focus today is Dalmia Bharat. The company has gone ahead and announced capacity addition for the Northeast region. Sharad is here to talk to us about all of that. Good morning, Sharad. Right, so let me talk to you about that. The capacity addition is going to be 2.4 million tons for the cement and 3.6 million tons for clinker. That will be in focus. They are eyeing around a 3,700 crore increase with regard to capex. So that will also come through by FY26 though. So you're seeing some amount of a capex increase coming through, and we also have a capacity addition coming through for Dalmia Bharat, which is why that will be in focus. How the funding will happen? A mix of debt as well as internal accruals as well as equity. So you have all of those details coming through with regard to Dalmia Bharat. Quickly though, moving on, we have Nilesh Shah, who's the MD at Kotak AMC. He advises investors to take up a bottoms-up approach for stock picking. Let's listen into his views on some of the top sectors that he has in mind.
Sectorally, we believe there is not much of opportunity of re-rating. Obviously, stock-specific moves will be there. IT is cheap from a valuation point of view, but there are uncertainties, and hence you have to pick up right stocks. Pharma hasn't performed for some time and hence has become cheap. But then there are company-specific issues, so you have to again pick up from a bottom-up basis. Banking has one of the best time. The profits are upwards of 1 lakh crore plus for the PSU banking system. State Bank of India declared 50,000 crore of profit. So banking sector per se is doing exceptionally well, but that is also reflected into prices. So I will say this is one market where you have to do hard work, bottom-up stock picking. There's no easy, low-hanging fruits available from a valuation point of view.
All right, that was Nilesh Shah for us. But on more stock-specific news, we have Lisa with us, who is here with all the brokerage notes that came in this morning. Lisa, tell us what are the brokerage notes saying this morning?
Well, some brokerage notes on some earning candidates. Let's start with Mahindra & Mahindra. Goldman Sachs has maintained a buy, hiking the target price from 1490 to 1530, and they say that the Q4 was in line, and also the El Nino impact, which was a bit concerning, that will be less impactful, and also the auto business that is outperforming peers. Macquarie has also maintained an outperform on the stock, and they have hiked the target price to 1536 from 1521 marginally. Well, what is driving their constructive outlook on the stock is that a solid PV order book and a resilient tractor demand. That is why they are bullish on the stock. Management also expects to further gain market share helped by the new lightweight tractor launch. Moving on to Sun Pharma, Credit Suisse has maintained an outperform on the stock, and they have cut the target price to 1100 from 1150 earlier. They say that the growth runway in key specialty molecules, that is expected to sustain the EBITDA margin going forward, and also the India sales growth that is expected to benefit from the improved productivity in sales force. And however, they maintain that the Taro sales outlook that remains a bit weak. And lastly, Nomura has maintained a buy on the stock at a target price of 1190, and they say that the company has guided for high single digit for FY24. So these are the stocks that are on brokerage radar for today.
Thanks a lot for that, Lisa. Let's quickly move on, though, to our News Fatafat segment. Prime Minister Modi will be flagging off the first Vande Bharat Express train of the northeast in Assam today. The northeast-bound Vande Bharat will run from New Jalpaiguri in West Bengal to Guwahati in Assam. We're also looking at the Narendra Modi-led government at the helm, which completes 9 years today. The 9-year-long tenure saw the altering of India's economic landscape, and how, with a slew of new measures like the GST, the demonetization policy which happened, and among others, of course. BJP sources suggest that a press conference will be held in the state capitals in this regard. The union ministers will hold this press conference in the BJP-ruled states along with the CMs. Lastly, we have Union Home Minister Amit Shah, who will embark on his 3-day visit to violence-hit Manipur today to resolve the ongoing crisis. Shah would be working to end the ethnic crisis and deliver justice to all the people.
And IMD predicts rain along with the dust storms in the national capital over the next 24 hours. This after rain lashed parts of the city in the wee hours of Monday morning, bringing relief from the heat. Rain and gusty winds speed of 40 to 60 kilometers per hour is expected to occur over and adjoining areas near Delhi NCR. And the blockbuster IPL finale between Chennai Super Kings and Gujarat Titan has been postponed due to the heavy rains in Ahmedabad. The match is scheduled to be played today. If CSK manage to ink a victory today, it will be their 5th IPL title.
Right, and what is Chris Wood's advice to investors, those who are invested, those who want to invest, and the ones that are not invested in India? In an exclusive chat with ET Now, he talks about why he is bullish on India. But I will toss to that bite. We are completely out of time as well on this show. So take a look at what Chris Wood has to say.
There are 3 types of investors. 1, who own India. 2, who want to buy India. And 3, who've never bought India. What would be advice to all the 3 categories?
Well, to be fair to the people who never bought India, one complication in India, it's not that easy to buy Indian stocks unless you're set up with FII. It's not like there's hundreds of Indian ADRs. So if you really want everybody to buy India, you just have to make it easier to buy Indian stocks.
And those who are currently invested in Indian stocks, what should they do?
No, the emerging market people will be adding to their Indian exposure now, and global money, which no longer wants to buy Chinese stocks because they're worried that the US government's going to order them to sell the Chinese stocks, or they're worried that if they buy a Chinese stock, it will be sanctioned. So global money is definitely beginning to look to add to exposure to India.
So can I say that the ducks are just aligning correctly in terms of liquidity? Domestic institutional investors are getting inflows.
Absolutely.
Because of SIP. Foreign institutional investors have just about made a comeback. And globally, there are multiple problems which will force foreign investors to double up into India.
Yeah, you see, well, the dedicated emerging market guys are only a little overweight India relative to. They're always overweight India, but they're much less overweight than they used to be, so they can definitely add exposure. But the question is whether global money, which is a much bigger pool, but for India, the benchmark weighting is minute. Will they just come to India just because it's a great story, even though it's a very small part of their index? And I think that